Next we got up is Lieutenant Commander, if I'm not mistaken, Drew Barker. Drew, you there?
I'm here. I'm ready to rock and roll.
I
Thanks so
do
much.
see you standing there. So, Drew, you're Commander, Naval Air Forces Force Readiness Analytics. I'm sure that's got an acronym, correct?
Brag.
That's what I thought. Excellent. You've been doing design thinking for about 5 years. And we'll even throw your fun. You like to do some running and do some riding, huh?
That's right.
I bet that
Working
plays
with kids.
well when you're filling out these stickies. All right. Without further ado, Drew, all yours.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, so I'll give you guys a quick background on my introduction to design thinking. Actually came via someone I know who's out in the audience, been pretty vocal. Dave Nobles. It's amazing what you can do with a blog. And it was really reading into what he got started down in San Diego called the Athena Project that opened my eyes to design thinking. The heart and the passion was giving sailors the tools and the opportunity to take their ideas for improving their ship, for improving the fleet, for improving their area wherever they're based, and turning those into reality. Design thinking is certainly one of the linchpins of those tools that we found useful in bringing to the sailors and giving them a greater voice. So partnering with Dave, this was roughly 5 years ago, established my own chapter of the Athena Project with him, and we saw a lot of outstanding results come from that. We combined the pitch competition, which looked a little bit like TED Talk, versus combined with Shark Tank for sailors to the deck plates, with the design thinking piece, often running a design thinking event ahead of time, we call Athena Think, to help the sailors refine their ideas and work on it in a diverse group. And that was the first real instance where I saw design thinking impact people and inspire people and help them bring their ideas to the next level. And from there on, I was sold. Since then, I've really come to reflect on how it applies to this African proverb that I heard. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Think about that. The nature of the diversity of thought combined against your problem will help you go further. The beauty of design thinking is that it enables you to do some of both. You can go fast because your team of diverse thinkers is acting more as one than as a diverse group. The tools in which you come together and everyone has the silent opportunity to contribute ideas and get them out on the board. Everyone can look and distill those ideas quickly, come to conclusions about what is likely to work and not, all together, all in a coordinated fashion, all in a way where you can move much faster as a group than traditional. So having some experience with that the design thinking implementation of the deck plates, also saw it used very well by Tang. And Tang brought together the scientists and engineers with the sailors and ran their own design events that way. And that showed that this tool is certainly applicable to not just small individual events, but also to much larger events where you start to bring in every element of the organization. And then finally got the opportunity to run my own sort of design blitz last year. And I'd like to walk you guys through just a few of those artifacts. This isn't about how we did it, but just to show you some of the artifacts that we use, that we just sort of invented. It's a very extensible, flexible tool that you all can use and adapt to your own circumstances. And this design event, just to give you an idea, was within the acquisitions world, it was basically half a dozen program offices, about 12 to 15 stakeholders coming together. We had a group of about 45. I think our median age was somewhere between 40 and 50, maybe in that upper range. Most of them were PhD, scientist types at the cutting edge of their fields. And we were working to try to integrate technology into an architecture where multiple program offices could come together and sort of synchronize their efforts as opposed to acting in their own independent stovepipes. But we had a lot of fun with that. So give me a quick second here as I bring up my screen and launch into just a quick overview of those things. I'm not going to dwell on them very long, and that the real point of this is just to give you a quick overview of some of the tools in play. Start at the beginning here. All right. So our three-day design blitz kicked off, where we considered ourselves essentially as though we were the contractors responding to an RFP from the government, and we were going to divide into a team of teams. Day one was really all about getting as many ideas out there. So this was just a broad, go as broad as you can. Day two was a day for refining and narrowing down those ideas. And day three was going to be presenting essentially a rapid prototype of our proposed projects. For us, that prototype was paper, as it was much more an architecture design strategy than anything else. Similar as you've seen, much of design thinking is all about the ideas and not necessarily about where they come from. Love that element of design thinking. And also love the fact that it is not your standard meeting, right? This is not about one person talking in a serial fashion, where there's only really one idea in the air at any given time. We know that is what you tend to see in the government. One person really doing work, the rest of them sort of standing around getting credit. So instead of playing with one ball, we went to more of the dodgeball approach. Everyone gets an opportunity, everyone gets a voice, everyone gets a sticky pad and a Sharpie and can launch into it. So it should look and feel a lot more fun and a lot more chaotic, and that's the way it is. And then just so you know, this is going somewhere. We neck it down and focus it in. I had to show these engineers like this can be done in an organized fashion, and there's actually a lot of structure to it, and they became much more comfortable with that. Of course, you have your basic ground rules, yes, and we talked a little bit about improv and how the rules of improv really facilitate the human interaction that will lead to us springboarding off of one another's ideas and working in a much more supportive fashion. Overall, if people have reservations or doubts, we focus them into turn those reservations or doubts out of statements and turn them into questions. Help the speaker, whoever was posting the idea, dig deeper into some of the specifics, because in that way we can refine each other's ideas much better. Ultimately, by bringing this large group of folks together, we were not looking for any local optimum, but we're looking for where we can get to the best optimum for the entire organization or global. It's a journey. Certainly takes an adventurous spirit, but then I'd also like to give a quick notice in that journey. There are a lot of tools out there. For me, I was fortunate to get trained by Think Long, and those guys have a great program. They also have a military discount for all of you who are active duty. So please be sure to check that out. They also offer free resources. Essentially, once you buy the book, you can log in and get a whole slice of their portfolio of products. A couple of other pieces that I used to pull into this particular sprint was Get Back and business model generation, and I'll show you real quick how I folded those together. So We were thinking strategically. We were trying to break the status quo. And we were taking a little bit of a page from Viktor Frankl. So if you're familiar with Viktor, he spoke to live as if you were living a second time, as though you had acted wrongly the first time. This was a pre-mortem. Essentially, if we were to go forward the way we do things in our traditional sense, where would we go wrong? How would we be looking back and regretting, those things? And so for us, multiple program offices all working independently, what is that naturally going to result in? And after contemplating that, then take the bold path to doing it differently, better, as though you get a second chance. We did a moonshot drill, followed by bringing those ideas down into just a few, and incubating those ideas with prototypes, and then we red teamed those prototypes for further refinement, and then finally presented what was most compelling out of what came out of all that. And following that presentation, we started to knit the ideas together that came from the 3-day conference, pulled together something that was pretty dramatic. So with that, the rest of that is a little bit more of the how-to, how to write stickies and all that sort of thing. So I'll skip over that for now. But just to get another idea of some of the extensibility, we created a whole set of our own canvases for the sticky notes. So mission model generation, and there's been a couple of iterations out there. We created one that worked for us based on what we were going after. An architecture, since we're building in an architecture, we also did some thinking about, okay, what are some of the things that we want brainstormed on, and we want to go broad and narrow on for that. There's a whole set of different tools to be able to use, which is a big portion of why I've really come to enjoy design thinking. So with that, I think I'm going to pause here and see if I have any questions. And while I unshare my screen, Josh, if you would let me know what's being asked.
Yes, appreciate the presentation, Drew. You have a question hanging out in there. I'm not exactly familiar with the acronym, but are you an AEDO, Alpha Echo Delta Oscar? And the question being, how are you taking requirements from sailors and using that feedback to circumvent or coordinate with OpNav or the PMO?
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. So my personal journey, having lived through, all that we were doing with the Athena project, and we had a number of sailor ideas. It was like 150 to 200, probably about 10 to 15 of them that we were able to pair with R&D efforts and get funding applied to them. This was all grassroots, by the way. This was completely all volunteer, just did it on our own. We didn't have a ton of top cover until the NIAC came along, and a big shout out to the NIAC for those who were on that piece. Really enabled us to go further, faster. That got shut down, and I knew that I wanted to get into the acquisition side to be able to answer that very question. So yes, I'm an AEDO. I've spent my last 3 years doing program management, trying to get much more familiar with what's going on in that whole development process. And now I'm at the TICOM level. So went from the acquisition side, I'm still as an AEDO, but back onto the operational front to look specifically at how we funnel requirements. I'm not saying that we've got it solved now, but that is my focus for the next couple of years, is really looking hard at how we might institute some change within our policy and practices, even at the higher levels, to better facilitate leveraging the cognitive surplus, pulling those prototypes that come straight from the deck plates into the decision-making process of what we fund and pursue in the future. So if there's anyone out there who's also working that or very interested in doing that sort of work with me, I am all about it.
Excellent. Appreciate the answer. It sounds like you're getting very creative with a lot of the tools from design thinking to use in many different ways. Um, I've got a question for you if you have a second, Drew. Is there any creative ways, one you kind of stick to that you've kind of come up with to use these tools by chance? I mean, just throwing stickies on board with groups of people in order to come up with something or whatever it was, anything like that.
So first, I think it's really helpful just to have the icebreaker and really to put everyone gets on the level playing field first, and at that point, it's much more about just being open to it, and so the more that you can sort of establish that sense of openness and exploration, the better off you're going to be. So it can be just as easy as, well, why don't we just try it? Let's get some sticky notes and let's just start tackling one of the things that's bothering us now, and just start putting it up on the board. You may start to see some areas where that filters into some natural categories and that sort of thing. And honestly, the more that you play with it, the easier it gets to sort of manipulate and start to drive at value. I don't know if that helps, but that's sort of what you normally ask.
It certainly does. Appreciate that. Yeah, I just found, if you use some of the tools and various things, just like you were saying, you may find it useful in other areas and get rapid results and get people involved and collaborate and hear their word, and definitely very powerful tools for many different uses. Appreciate that. So through that, has any of this, if you bring these and use them in different functions, inspired others, maybe, peers or subordinates or leaders and they've come back and say, hey, that thing that we did in this, I used it over here. Have you seen anything like that, inspired them to use some of those?
So funny you should ask. I was pretty trepidatious about introducing 6 program offices and a bunch of PhD guys that have never experienced anything like this to that process. They took that 3-day design event and ran with it. So I led the first one and sort of had roughly 4 or 5 facilitators that I coached through that process. And those 4 or 5 facilitators have since run half a dozen of the same types of events against as many different problems. So yeah, the level of adoption was absolutely surprising. Not just there for that event, but also in Athena, just to see it take off at the grassroots level when they had a little bit of top cover and they had some folks who were helping organize events. It was something that spread fairly quickly.
Yes, that it does. That's good. That's good. I've had some similar experiences with that, and just showing the tools without actually explaining what they are, and people kind of grasped onto it and ran with it, and used it for their own things. Very powerful, and really good to see how they're collaborating like that and letting everybody have a voice. Drew, thank you for being on. Appreciate it. Thanks for answering some of the questions we have. Unless you have anything else, we're gonna move forward with our next speaker.
No, yeah, that's it. Thanks so much for the opportunity. I really believe in what you guys are doing, and way that you're living out the dream that Athena started in some ways, and being able to provide the workforce with the tools they need to bring their ideas to reality. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Take care.